So the first thing you need is air. An average person will lose consciousness after about 1 minute of not breathing. Irreparable brain damage will happen 1 to 2 minutes after that, and death about a minute later. After air comes water. Now, the average person can last maybe 3-4 days, an extraordinary case, maybe a week, without water. And then comes food. Now, this all depends on the condition of your body when you stop eating, but you could die after 8 days or 21 days or maybe a little bit longer when you don't have food. So let's call these three, air, water, food, our basic survival needs. But there are more. After these basic needs come other essential needs, physical needs like health in general, sleep, safety. And then you can add to that security and housing and sex and resources and work. We need all these things. These are the obvious basic human needs. But there are more. There are two more. They're not obvious. We need to talk about them. They're less obvious, but I would suggest that they're equally crucial to human existence. Now, without these two needs being met, you're not going to die physically, but without them, you will most certainly die inside. These two life objectives are what I call the holy grails of the human soul. The two longings that hit you every time you wake up in the morning and every time you lie down at night. Without these two basic drives being met, you will not thrive, nor will you ever truly be yourself. They are love and significance. Two basic human needs. Let's talk about love. You were born with the need to be loved and to love, to be cared for, touched, to experience community, to be known, experience affection and the attention of others. Now, where does this come from? Well, we know this about God, right? That God is what? He is love. God is love. It's like the summary of the whole character of God. God is love. And he dwelt in love even before anything was created because he had this loving community with Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So there was love. God is defined by love and God lived in love. And so I don't think I need to remind you that each one of us, every human being, is created in the image of God. Now, you put two and two together. Now, if you're created in the image of God and God is love, what does that mean about us? That means that was implanted in us before any of us came to be was this need for love and to be loved. To love a person, to welcome a person, to offer hospitality to a person is to awaken their God-given essential nature. That's why last week's message was so crucial. Isolation and loneliness strikes at one of the two core needs of human beings. Loneliness gnaws at the most essential you. So love's important. I don't know that anybody would deny that. Nobody'd push back on that. Of course you know that. We know that about every human being. But did you know that this idea of significance is equally important? Significance meaning the craving to have meaning, purpose, substance, to matter, to have worth, to have a calling that leads to a destiny. You were created with a why to live for. That's how you were created. You were born with a craving to be significant. Now, where does that come from? If the need to be loved comes from God and we're made in the image of God, well, the same thing is true here. You were made in the image of God, and as a result, you have the need to be significant. Why? Because God is defined not only by love, but by his purposefulness. Watch this. God is always on mission. God is always seeking to fulfill his purpose. I would suggest to you that there is a why that defines God's very existence. Now, how do we know that? Well, let me point out a couple of pieces of scripture where Paul talks about those who are the children of God, who are called according to his, oh, look there, his purpose. God has a purpose. And then the same writer, Paul, wrote to the Ephesians. He says, God has now revealed to us his mysterious will regarding Christ, which is to fulfill his own, oh, look there, good plan. God has a plan. God has a purpose. What is it? Well, let me summarize it in two narratives, two stories from the scriptures. One, you probably know these stories, but let me remind you. God calls a man, Abraham, small family, out of nowhere. He says, I have an idea. Abraham, I've got a purpose. I've got a plan. I've got something I want to do. So here's what it's going to take. I'm going to have to take you from being a small family to an uber large family. You're going to be like stars in the sky, sand on the seashore, that whole thing. That's how big you're going to be, because I have something in mind. Because look at all the nations of the world, all the tribes, all the people groups, all the people in the world. I have a desire to bless them, to bring myself into their lives and make this world what it needs to be. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to do that through you. I'm going to bless you. I know you're going to dig that. But then I'm going to bless the world through you. You see, God has a purpose. This is something that he thinks about when he wakes up in the morning. I know God doesn't wake up in the morning. I know that. But just use your imagination. If God woke up in the morning and stretched and he thought, what am I going to... God doesn't walk around random going, what am I going to do today? Hey, what if I should create another planet or something? I don't know. No, he has a purpose in mind. Jesus captured that same thought about the worldwide purposefulness of God when one of the very last things, maybe the very last thing he said to his followers was this: look, you're gathered here, but you're going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and the uttermost parts of the world, because the purpose still remains. The same purpose that he told Abraham remains with the followers of Jesus Christ, to bless the whole world. God is a God of purpose. He is driven. When he wakes up in the morning, he has one thing on his mind. Now let me get more specific the way we describe it here at Grace. When God created the world, he looked at the world and he saw everything that he had made, and he goes, wow, that is very good. That is very good. We know what happened next. We kind of botched it. Human beings made decisions and rebelled against God, and what we ended up with, that we have to this day, are the 6 broken places of the world. Human beings separated from God. Human beings isolated from one another. Human beings hating each other. Our bodies, minds, and spirits in deep pain. The planet itself in decay, and huge swaths of injustice, from poverty to slavery, just dominating our worldview. It's just what we're swimming in. It's the stew we live in. And yet God created the world at the beginning, and he said, that's very good. And then that's in the book of Genesis, and that's our first book of the Bible. We get to the last book of the Bible in the book of Revelation, and we have this picture painted of everything returning to its very good status. So how do we get from point A to point B? Because what's in between are the 6 broken places. This is God's purpose. God is to raise us up so that the broken places get healed over time, and the world returns to the way God wants it to be. We are people of purpose. This is why we are gnawing inside of us with the need for significance, because we're just like Dad. We're like our Heavenly Father. We were created in the image of God, and so we were created with purpose. So let me summarize it this way. Number 1, you will not flourish until you are loved and you love. You get that. But number 2, you will not flourish until you discover a why to live for. Now, last week, we explored that first part, the need for love and community. And what I noted last week, I think it was surprising to me when I first researched it, and I think to many of you said the same thing, that when you are not loved, when you are lonely and you are isolated, there are serious physical and emotional ramifications, from high blood pressure to anxiety to depression. And gosh, then if you're lonely and lack community, I mean, you have a 30 to 60% higher likelihood of dying early, right? So I'm telling you, there are ramifications to not having your love need met. But there are also ramifications to having your significance need not met. So let me describe some of those ramifications and draw for you a scale from mild ramifications to extreme serious ramifications. So let's just say you don't know your calling, you don't know your destiny, you don't know why you're here. You really have no why to live for. On the mild end, at the very least, you're going to be bored. Like, I don't know, what do I want to do? I don't know. There's something about you that you're always kicking dirt and trying to figure out what you'd be doing. That's boredom. And that's mild, and you can live with that. Go to a movie, you'll be fine afterwards, right? It's mild. But then it can get more serious, because if you don't deal with this question of why I'm here, it's going to go from boredom to restlessness. Now, restlessness is something else. This is where, what should I be doing with my life? And and then you're talking with your friends, and you feel like you sound like a pest, and you're restless. And I don't know that's not a good thing, because it can squirt out into other areas of your life. Because if it goes from boredom to restlessness, sometimes it can become anxiety. And then it's like, I am really concerned, and it starts to affect your work, and it starts to affect your relationships, and you're living in fear, and you wake up in the morning and you have that almost nauseating feeling, I don't want to go do what I'm doing. I don't know, why am I here? But it can go further, especially if that anxiety and that lack of purposefulness gets into your age where I am today, in my 60s or your 70s or your 80s, and now it's not anxiety, now it's regret. Now it's regret. My word, what did I make of my life? How come I'm here and I don't feel like I've contributed? See, and probably worst of all, it's not going to sound bad till I explain it to you. When all this is going on and you haven't found your purpose and your direction in your life, watch this, you can start to compensate. Now, this can go south real fast, because when you're compensating for a deep lack in your life, you start compensating by filling that hole with something else. This is the stuff of midlife crises. This is when people start losing their minds and start doing really dumb things. This is when marriages end, because, I don't know if I love you anymore. That's not what it is. You just don't know who you are in this world. You're living out your frustration in your relationship with your spouse. It can get worse, because you go from being, I can handle my liquor, I'm a social drinker, to now you're an always drinker, because you're trying to fill in this hole. And if it's not that, it might become prescription drugs, or it might become all kinds of compensating behavior. Look, all I wanted to tell you, then you might end up in whacked out in deep anxiety and depression. All I'm saying is, if you think the lack of love leads to ramifications, I'm telling you the lack of significance leads to pretty heady ramifications as well. So this is serious business. Now, why is this so intense? You are hardwired by God to have a destiny. You are God's for the umpteen hundredth time, you are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for you to do. Destiny is primordial. I just wanted to use that word, so I found a place to use that word. I thought it's a cool word, but it's true. Primordial, okay? Then I like this one. Destiny is primeval. You like that one? I like that too. Your destiny has been implanted in you like a chip or a virus given to you by God before you had a body, before you had a personality. He implanted this in you before you were you. And he looked at you and he said, boy, I love him or her, but not only that, I like her. I like him because I can see what they don't know, because they don't exist yet, but what they don't know is that they're going to move into this world, and if they can find their destiny, we're going to get from A to B faster. This is why this is so crucial. This is why this tears you apart when you cannot find your significance. What's it feel like inside? What's it feel like inside when you start to talk about this with yourself? We start having the self-conversation. You start thinking, what can be? Well, it starts as a yearning. I talked to a guy, bless his heart, Iraqi war vet, out in the lobby after the first hour, and I watched this. When you're talking to somebody who's experienced a yearning, watch their eyes. When they're experiencing longing, because they're looking at you and then their eyes go up like this. It's a sure giveaway that they're thinking in themselves, what if? What if? It starts with a yearning. That's what it feels like inside. Some of you right now are feeling that inside. You know that. I mean, you're looking at me like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're feeling the yearning. But it goes further, because if you start to explore this further, here's a guy, Jeremiah in the Old Testament, explained what it meant to him to pursue his calling. He said, but if I say I never mention the Lord or speak in his name, his word burns in my heart like a fire. It's like a fire in my bones, and I'm worn out trying to hold it in. I can't do it. When you start to touch on your destiny and you start to touch on your calling, it feels like fire in your bones. Whoo! But then it goes further. I saw this with my own eyes on Friday night as I stood on the edge of the pond, and I saw the car. At that point, we didn't know if it was one person in the car, two people in the car, because the car had gone down so far in the water, all we could see was the trunk and the back two tires. Melissa was fully under the water. We didn't know it at the time, but there was an air pocket there that was keeping her. She had air to breathe even though she was fully under the water. And then I watched as Matt and Travis and two other Noblesville policemen threw themselves into the water. By now, and by the way, the car's still in the pond right now. We're going to get it out on Monday. It's in the middle of the pond. They swam in that frigid water out to the car. Matt went under the water with one of the other cops, and they broke the window, Matt using his elbow to break the window. When that happened, of course, you know what happens. The air pocket, the water rushed into the car. Matt reached in, grabbed Melissa's shoulders, and pulled her out of the car. Matt came to the surface. I watched this with my own eyes. They pulled Melissa out of the water. Matt throws his arm and he says, yes! That's a calling lived out. Look, when Matt and Travis and policemen, these first responders, I have all the respect in the world for our first responders, because when they get up in the morning, listen, when they get up in the morning, when they get up in the morning, they don't know if they're coming home. Ask their spouses. They don't know if they're coming home. Now, you tell me, what can get a hold of a guy who can kiss his wife or a woman and kiss her husband goodbye in the morning, not know if he'll see his children home at night? What kind of thing would drive them to the point where he would swim in that frigid water, risk his life? I sat with him in the hospital. I sat with Matt in hospitals. He shook like a leaf for hours trying to get his body up to. What would cause a man to do that? There is only one thing powerful enough to cause a man to do that, and that is a calling. That is a destiny that he was living for. Now listen to me. I know we revere, and we should, our first responders, and we can look at that and our hearts just beat faster and our spirits rise. But my friend, your destiny is equally important to this world. The way you invest yourself in this world will help God, that's right, this is the way he designed it, get us from A to B. Can I also tell you why I'm so worked up about this? Can you tell I'm worked up about this? Because my calling, after 40 years in ministry, do you know my calling is not necessarily to be a pastor or to preach? My calling is to make sure that you find your calling. My calling, my destiny in this world is to create more people of destiny so that we change the world. That's why I exist in this world. That's why I want to see more Matts, more Travises, and more people I'm going to talk about in a minute. The more we have, the more I feel like I'm walking in my destiny. Few things get me more emotionally worked up than seeing a person run to the flame of their calling. Let me tell you 3 stories. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was standing in a village on the Valley of a Thousand Hills, outside of Durban, South Africa. I was there to observe. It was the height of the AIDS crisis. We were, as a church, we're trying to figure out what ministry we wanted to partner with. We were looking at hospitals. We were looking at people who were doing incredible ministry, trying to save the lives. I also found myself standing on top of mass graves. They were pulling trucks up with bodies piled up in the back of the truck and dumping them, stacking them 10 deep in these graves. And I stood there in the horror of that that experience. But while we were there, they took us out to a village, and they said, you've got to see what this young man is doing. Dude, I think was 21 years old. I think he was early 20s. He knew that his village was packed with children who were orphans because all their parents had died of AIDS. They were all dead. These were children, little ones to big ones, who were being raised by their siblings. And they were hungry because no one would feed them. So this 21-year-old man said, I will figure it out. He went from person to person, from organization to organization, from village to village. He scraped up a little mutton here. He found a little vegetables here. He found a bag of rice here. And every day at 3 o'clock, he would make a fire with a big pot and put all this rice and then the kids would line up. They said, watch this, Dave. Stand over there. I stood over there. I had to put my sunglasses on because I was weeping like a baby as I was watching these kids line up from 2-year-olds to 17-year-olds for their one daily meal because a 21-year-old dude decided he would keep these kids alive. I'm telling you, when somebody is living in their destiny and it's like fire in their bones, man, you can't get too much of that. Then there's Heath Shaner. Heath attends here. He's 15 years old. He's a Carmel High School student. 15 years old. He's a smart kid. I mean, Heath's one of those kids. First time I met him, he said, hello, Mr. Rodriguez, how are you today? Shook my hand. I'm like, whoa, you don't see that very often. Smart as a whip. He's amazing, and he loves God. So much so. Here's what he told me. And this story is in the book that is just about ready to come out that I've finished. And I tell his story in more detail. He says, I know what my life was like without God. 15, everybody. So I just do everything in my power that I can get people to come to Christ. Now watch this. Look what he says. He said, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm not a Bible thumper, but I like to use practical reasons to help people get them to know Christ. I plant stones in people's shoes. He plants stones in people's shoes, making people wrestle with what they believe. 15-year-old kid at Carmel High School. I didn't tell him I was going to tell his story. He showed up last night at 6:15. His eyes are about like that big. So he came back this morning. He might still be here. If he's still here in the lobby, I'll introduce you to him. You got to meet him. He'll say, hello, my name is Heath Shaner. Powerful. And then there's this young lady that I want you to meet. Her name is Emily Deldar. Would you welcome her to the stage? So they may not know you, but they know your dad because your dad, Mike, is the tooth fairy of Grace Church,
yes,
right?
That is correct.
So he's a dentist and he wears the tutu at trunk or treat and gives out the toothbrushes. Great family. But Emily, I want to talk about you, right? Because 2018 will go down as a big year for you.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back this summer. Tell everybody what happened to you.
So this past summer, I started a nonprofit organization called the World Smiles Mission that collects toothpaste, toothbrushes, dental floss, dental equipment, and donates it to third world countries.
Okay, 16 years old, Carmel High School student yourself. You just didn't wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to start a nonprofit organization. How did you get to that point?
So I was asked to represent Carmel at the Congress of Future Medical Leaders in Boston this past summer. So I went there, and it was 2.5 days of people talking about all these inspirational things that they did when they were young. And some of them cured malaria. Some of them came up with these amazing tests that they took to these countries, and I was so inspired by it, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with that. And then the last speaker was named Sean Stevenson. He's a really famous motivational speaker with dwarfism. He was talking about how you can do whatever you want, no matter what obstacles are in your way. Like, that doesn't matter, because what you were meant to do will, like, overcome that.
So what did that feel like inside? I mean, you're sitting there, you're motivated. What did it feel like?
I was super excited, and I had all these thoughts running through my head, but I was also really confused and lost. I still didn't know what to do or anything, but I knew I wanted to do something.
Okay, so the passion was ignited.
Yes.
You already had a desire to do some sort of health care, especially with oral health.
Yes.
All that, but now there's a fire in you. What happened next?
Then I came back home, and you had a sermon in August about you were made for more. And that was a really, really touching service to me. I really believed it, and it was a really big turning point in the journey.
Okay, so at that point, you're like, okay,
Yes,
I'm in.
Exactly.
Because I was made for more, I'm going to try to figure it out. So,
Yes.
Which is cool.
Very cool.
Next step.
Then I went home that afternoon, and I was thinking, okay, what can I do with myself? And both my parents are dentists, and I want to be an orthodontist, so oral health just kind of seemed natural. So I did some research, and I found out that 1/2 of the world's population doesn't have a toothbrush.
Okay, wait. 1/2 of the world.
Yeah,
Did that blow you away?
it really did.
Did you know that?
Not at all. I don't think anyone knew that. It was crazy. And then what's even worse is that the people in these countries have to share brushes, and they can't, a lot of the times they don't even have a brush. They have to share twigs or use their fingers. And not only can poor oral health lead to lung disease, heart disease, gum disease, and increased maternal mortality rates, but something that not a lot of people know is that it's the #1 spreader of AIDS, Ebola, and HIV in these countries, because yes, everyone knows that they have them, but when you are sharing a toothbrush with somebody who has HIV, everyone is going to get it.
Whoever uses that toothbrush.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're blown away by this, and then you decided, I think I need to start a 501c3.
Exactly.
Is that really what happened?
Yeah, I wanted to start an organization, so I emailed some nonprofits in Indiana, and I said, hey, I'm trying to start a nonprofit. I have no idea what to do. Can you help me?
Can you help me? I don't know how to start a nonprofit. Who can help me?
Yeah, exactly. And I heard back from Dick and Susie Stevens, who run the Malawi project.
Now, Malawi is one of the poorest nations in the world.
It is the poorest.
On the continent of Africa.
Yes, it is the poorest country in the world. And so they do a lot of work there. And they met up with me in late August and said, yes, we'd love to help you. And so they've been guiding me the whole way, and they taught me how to do everything, how to set up everything. And then meanwhile, I had emailed a bunch of dental offices and businesses
Just
in Indiana.
emailed them and said, hey, can you help me out?
Exactly. I said, I'm looking for toothbrushes, toothpaste, dental floss, money, anything. Can you help me? And I got 1,200 in the span of 2 weeks when I met with them. And then they said...
1,200 toothbrushes?
Yes. And then they were actually going to go to Malawi in 2 weeks anyway, so they offered to take 400 of my stuff with them, and so we were able to save 400 lives in Malawi.
Okay, so all these kids and adults got toothbrushes.
Yes.
Now, all right, so now you got a 501c3. Tell them the story about that, how that came about.
So while they were gone, I applied with the IRS for my 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit status. And it was supposed to take me 3 to 9 months to hear back, and I heard back in 9 days. Yeah.
It sounds like God's in this, right? So now you got a 501c3.
Yes.
You're like the president of a new nonprofit, but you need a board.
I do.
Right? So you got yourself a board.
I do have a board. Their names are Laurel Williams, Abigail Emery, Gianna Hammonds, and Julia Garner, who is here today in the audience.
Who's here? Now, who are these people?
They are the girls I sit with at lunch.
But they have jobs. I mean,
They do.
They're people you eat lunch with, but they have jobs.
Absolutely. So Julia is our Director of International Relations. Gianna is our Director of Local Relations. Laurel is our Fundraising Coordinator. And Abigail is our Director of Communications.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's pause right now. Instead of talking about how it came about, let's let people see what it is. Because you also made a video because you realized, hey, it's 2018.
Yeah.
We need to communicate with a video. So here's a video that Emily made to help you understand her mission.
There was once a minute before you, a place like gates of heaven I walked through, but all too soon they brought me back to life. true. Some things take forever that felt true. The first call, fall, September, losing you. But all I had to do was watch the time wind. And know that no one stops the world from turning. Every minute that you live's a minute long. And 3 hours have passed since I took my mind off of you. 3 hours have passed since your last thought tried to run through. 3 hours have passed since a minute that I missed you. 3 hours have passed. It'll be 4 before you know it. I'll lose count. You don't count the 3 hours that passed. Sweet and bitter like the wine you left to breathe, but didn't drink in time. Now sour and cheap. At least it leaves a ring to mark the night. As candles dry, but you can't light the same fire that you burned through. And like a river, all the water's gone and changed, but still runs the same. 3 hours have passed since I took my mind off of you. 3 hours have passed since your last thought tried to run through. 3 hours have passed.
Now, I know this is about toothbrushes and toothpaste and all that right now, but your dream and your vision is bigger.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So the ultimate goal is to reduce that statistic. I don't want half the world to not have a toothbrush, but what I'm trying to do is not be just like all the other organizations that go there when it's too late and just extract their teeth. I want to be able to establish a culture, a lifestyle of oral care in those countries so that kids and then future generations will know it's important to brush your teeth and they'll have the access to do so. And so hopefully that'll reduce all the diseases that go on in those countries.
That sounds like a calling, does it not? Would you thank Emily for being with us today? I've been doing I've done this 4 hours now, and I got to tell you, I've been going through the sermon. I wanted to rush through the sermon to get to that point, because that's the message right there. 16 years old and already pursuing what God has laid on her heart. Now, folks, let me give you a little heads up on what's coming. We're going to wrap up this little 4-week series next weekend. Barry's going to take us deeper into this issue of strongholds. You want to think right now who you want to bring next week who's suffering with a stronghold in their life, so they can be introduced to the life-saving decision to know Christ and have that stronghold removed from their life. And then we're going to get to December, and our focus in December is we're going to go back to the 4 subjects we've covered in the last 4 weeks. In December, we're going to talk all about man's relationship with God. Of course, this in relationship to Christmas. We're going to look at John chapter 1 and talk about how a person can be reunited with the God of the universe. Be thinking about your one, who you want to bring in December. January, we're going to return to the strongholds issue. So what Barry covers next week, we're going to take in depth in January. And again, think about your one, the people that are far from Jesus, that are suffering with these strongholds that are holding them back. February, we're going to go in deeper onto the whole community and love thing, practical ramifications of loving and how to provide hospitality. And then in March, I am really excited because by then, the book I'm writing is going to be out. And in the month of March, I'll be teaching in depth about destiny and calling. The book title is A Why to Live For, How Your Destiny Intersects the Broken Places of the World. And we're going to talk in detail how you can find your calling and your destiny in this world. So that's coming over the next 4 months. But I want to wrap this up with a surprise I didn't expect. I'm about to share something that I didn't ask permission to share, but I don't think she would mind. Because last night, I got an email from Melissa, the young lady that was in the car that was rescued. She watched online last night. She's home. She's got some physical ramifications going on in her life, but listen to what she wrote me. She said, "Thank you so much for being with the first responders and with me last night. I'm truly humbled and grateful to each of you for reaching out and to everyone at Grace. Mostly, I'm eternally grateful to Matthew and to Travis for going above and beyond to save me, as well as to the countless others who risked their lives for me." And then she says, "I want to figure out a way to thank them." But listen to this next paragraph. "Dave, I watched the live stream of service tonight, and your message was really powerful. I remember very little from everything that happened on Friday night, but there was a pretty clear moment I had with God that I thought I would share. Somehow I was underwater, completely smashed against the window. No recollection of why I was or where I was. Only the realization that I couldn't breathe. Everything was dark. I was stuck, and I was dying. I have no idea why, but my last prayer to God was, 'Is this your plan for me after all of this?' And I heard a definite no from somewhere, and shortly thereafter, the glass broke. I know it sounds crazy, and maybe it is. I really don't know. I just thought I would share." God, is this your plan for me? Why am I here? Is this the way my life is going to end? And God said, "Melissa, no. No. There is much more for you to live for." So my friend, let me say this. I don't know how you're feeling about this business of calling a destiny. And if you are one of those people that feels like, I haven't amounted to much, is this all that there is in my life? Really? Well, here's the answer from God. It is no. You were made for more. You were made for more. And God's invitation is for you to step into your destiny. Join him in his work of changing the world in Jesus' name.